Thank you for attending this NCAA NAIA JUCO Eligibility and Recruiting in-service webinar being brought to you by the 501c3 nonprofit freerecruitingwebinar.org initiative. If you can't hear anything, make sure your speakers are turned up and are not on mute. Everyone, grab a pen and pad, get prepared to learn. Look, as a high school coach, high school counselor, I understand. Nobody majored or even minored in NCAA eligibility. You get to this level, it gets dumped in your lap. I make you this promise. In about 55 minutes to an hour, you will be far better prepared and educated on this subject matter. Let's get started. Our nonprofit is partnered with state associations coast to coast, from California, Louisiana, up to Maine, down to Florida, and pretty much every state in between. And we thank those executive directors and executive boards of these state associations for reviewing our initiative and deciding, you know what, yes, this is needed. Let's get involved. Let's provide this resource nationwide and also in our state. As far as your presenter, my name is Dan Issa. There's a little picture of me. And I've been told that I've walked the walk and now I'm talking the talk. Was fortunate enough to play in college for 4 years and even more fortunate to pursue an NFL career for the better part of 5 years. 11 NFL tryouts, 3 CFL tryouts, then got into sportscasting. And if there's been a local sporting event, folks, chances are I've covered it. Multiple Super Bowls, College World Series, Major League World Series, Stanley Cup playoffs, NBA playoffs, Masters Golf Tournament, Daytona 500, U.S. Open Golf Tournament, and on and on and on. Multiple college bowl games and more high school state championships than I could possibly ever remember. All along, always involved in coaching on the youth level, on the high school level, even training with collegiate and professional athletes to try to help everybody along with their athletic endeavors. So I've been told I'm very uniquely qualified to speak on this subject matter, and well, who am I to argue? So I hope my knowledge helps you become better educated on this subject matter. Social networking sites are on Facebook and Twitter. Let's face it, who isn't nowadays? Or at least it seems like it. We encourage you to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. There's our web addresses, facebook.com/FRW.org, and the Twitter address is right there. And tell a friend, okay? Share this resource. We're all here to help each other. Let's make sure that your friends, your colleagues, your teammates are also better educated, because again, as I promised, here in about 50 minutes, you will be better educated about this process. As far as the webinar agenda, what we like to do is take a second to show you exactly what your parents and kids will be educated on when they watch the Family Student webinar. This obviously is designed more for coaches and counselors. But as you can see, we address a lot of subject matter, some of it kind of controversial, and we have your back. Okay, we understand sometimes managing parents' expectations on this subject matter can be, shall we say, a little challenging. Well, we're there to tell them that where this process stands and where they need to be in it, and also get into, as you can see, NAIA, JUCO education, talking a little bit about how to negotiate, cooperative education, dangers of social networking sites, recruiting services. We'll talk about that also. And our stance is much like our state partners. You should not be paying somebody to get recruited. It's not rocket science. But we wrap things up with the single most important part, as we all will agree, is the academic part and NCAA core course requirements, which causes quite a bit of confusion. So there's a snapshot of what your parents and kids can have access to. If you can steer them there, let us do the work for you. Here's a sample. 3 rules of being a parent. I think you guys are going to like this. Rule number 1, your child's future is your responsibility, not the coaches or the counselors. Again, let us be the bad cop to your good cop. Let us deliver this message. As we know, when this message frequently is told by a third party, it has a tendency to resonate and stick more with the parents and kids. Let us do it for you. We also try to be interactive. We ask questions, and we'll ask you the same question. The term full ride is a 4-year guaranteed scholarship. What's your thought? True? False? Or the term full ride technically does not exist? What do you think? Where do you stand with America? I always feel like there should be like a bed of Jeopardy music here or something. Well, how about that? Internet magic, huh? Pretty cool. Well, there you have it. Nationwide, about 61% of people say true. The term full ride is a 4-year guaranteed scholarship. And guess what? That's not true. The term full ride technically does not exist, now with an asterisk, because as of October 2011, D1 schools now have the ability to guarantee more than 1 year of aid. Operative word being ability. They don't have to. It's their option. But now at least there is that negotiating chip, if you will, for families to have an opportunity to get more than 1 year of aid. All right, let's get into the meat of the presentation. NCAA core course requirements. We're going to start with NCAA core course eligibility 101. So some of you, I'm sure, are very knowledgeable on this subject matter, but let's not take any chances. We'll start with the basics. We'll get into the 300 and 400 level classes here shortly. What's a core course? All right, there's a lot of misunderstanding here. A core course is a class which the NCAA has reviewed and designated as core for your high school, and where counselors a lot of times and even coaches sometimes get themselves into trouble, they'll have a kid take a class which goes towards state requirements for graduation or eligibility, but for whatever reason, the NCAA hasn't approved that class for their requirements. So it's very important to know that a core class by state requirements is not necessarily a core class for NCAA requirements. And this is on a list which is still commonly referred to as a 48H. That is a list of which practically, or every high school in America does have, 27 to 30,000 of them, a list of classes which the NCAA has reviewed for each specific high school and has designated as a core class for NCAA eligibility. So if you're not familiar with the term 48H or your school's 48H, I would highly encourage you to research that at your school and get better educated on your NCAA approved core classes. All right, moving on with core course requirements. The cumulative GPA, or the GPA that your kids are used to seeing on your report card, does not equal the core course GPA. And get a load of this. It's not uncommon for the core course GPA to be an entire point lower than the cumulative GPA. So let's put those numbers in perspective. Kid has a 3.0 on his report card. NCAA could very easily tell that kid, hey, you got a 2.0 by our standards. And that's a huge difference, because now this kid who thought he had a 3.0 and she thought was home free to get into the college of their choice, which was requiring a 2.7, now they got no shot. They're way on the other side of the fence. It's important to pay attention to detail when looking at core classes and their core GPA. And speaking of paying attention to detail, anybody notice anything wrong here on this page? Anything? Cumulative? I'm not quite sure what that word is. The point being, we emphasize with your kids to make sure everything is double, triple, quadruple checked before they start communicating with the college recruiters to make sure that their first impression is a positive one. And we try to encourage them also, before they send that information, have someone else review it. Most of you may not have picked up that typo, but it was there. So it's important to have a second set of eyes to help your families and kids best represent themselves in the college's eyes. All right, moving on. Next interactive question for you. What year did you start tracking your NCAA core course GPA? And nationwide, I got to say, the number's a little staggering. It's sorry to report that 80% of kids don't start tracking their NCAA core till junior year or later, and that is way, way too late. This process needs to start much sooner, because it is not unusual to have 33%, a third, of your NCAA core course requirements satisfied in the, drumroll please, freshman year. That's where the problems start. Kids bury themselves in their freshman year, and they don't even realize it. Let us send the message. Help us help you get these kids on track with their schoolwork as soon as they walk onto your campus. Who may submit core course changes at your high school? Get this question quite a lot as we speak around the country at various conferences. And the answer is, the NCAA has one person per high school that they will allow for them to communicate with about core course changes. Sometimes it's the principal. Sometimes it's an assistant principal. Very frequently, it's a director of guidance. Once in a blue moon, it's an athletic director. But it's important to know who that point of contact is at your high school. How often should core courses be updated? Well, the simple answer is whenever your school makes a change. And a lot of schools sometimes will just change the titles of their classes. And we encourage you, if you're watching this, be proactive. If you know of changes coming, make sure that the powers that may be know that those class changes need to also be reported to the NCAA Eligibility Center. I hear all the time where class titles are changed, but they're not updated, and later you have a potential hornet's nest on your hands. But the simple answer is, how often should core courses be updated? Whenever there's a change. And as I was just talking about the name of a class, let me give you an example here. Early American Studies. I've heard of districts having a class titled similar to this, and it got rejected by the NCAA. And the school district's like, why is this class not being accepted? And then they just resubmitted the class under a different title, American History 1. And guess what? It got approved. Point being, apply the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. Don't have big, convoluted class titles when applying these classes for NCAA approval. And be proactive. If you know changes are coming, make sure they know to keep things simple. All right? Hope this information is helping you here. All right, let's talk about the mystery of the NCAA Eligibility Center. It is now 16 core requirements for Division I and now also 16 core requirements for Division II. But here's the rub. The NCAA 16 core requirements for D1 are not the same 16 core requirements as for Division II. So technically, in theory, you can have an athlete eligible for one level and ineligible for the other. And here's a very important caveat of information for you to keep in mind. If you have a kid that you know academically, they're just struggling, and they may not make it, and you know they're getting recruited, and a scholarship's on the line, do whatever you can to make sure that kid graduates cap and gown on time with their kid. Reason being, only one core course can be made up over the summer after graduation, provided the PSA, prospective student athlete, graduates with their class on time. If they do not graduate cap and gown on time, they cannot make up any classes after graduation. So you see where I'm going with this. The kid's on a borderline and may have to make up a core class. Make sure they graduate on time. And here's another bit of information I'm sure is going to make you happy. Acceptance of online credit recovery classes for now Division I and Division II has become very restrictive. Not impossible, but there are a lot more requirements now to get those classes approved, and here they are. If you'd like later, if you can't jot all this down, email us through the website. We will email you these class changes for credit recovery. Number 1, courses taught through distance learning, online credit recovery, etc. need to be comparable in length, content, and rigor to courses taught in a traditional classroom setting. Students may not skip lessons or test out of modules. The course must be for your college prep. Number 2, and remember, I'm just the messenger here, not my rules, NCAA rules. All courses must include ongoing access between the instructor and student, as well as regular interaction for purposes of teaching, evaluating, and providing assistance. This may include, for example, exchanging of emails between the student and teacher, feedback on assignments, and the opportunity for the teacher to engage the student in individual instruction. Number 3, any course taken must have a defined time period for completion. For example, it should be clear whether the course is meant to be taken for an entire semester or during a more condensed time frame, such as 6 weeks. And number 4, non-traditional courses should be clearly identified as such on the high school transcript. Not 2 out of 4, not 3 out of 4, 4 out of 4. And sometimes I get the question, well, Dan, how are they going to know if a class is credit recovery or online distance learning? Well, here's a red flag for the NCAA. Initial transcripts are sent end of junior year. Kid bombed algebra, freshman class. He got a D. Final transcript, that D became an A. Ding, 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 ding. What happened here? How did this kid turn his D into an A? That is a sign for the NCAA to review it and see perhaps if that change happened through credit recovery. All right, moving along. Core course requirements more specifically. Here's what they are broken down, D1 to D2. And as you can see looking over this, while the two divisions add up to 16 core, there are different subsection requirements. And this at times can be, as we know, a bit of a headache. Well, time permitting here at the end, which we will have, we're going to show you briefly a website which might further assist you with this subject matter. For the class of 2016 and beyond, there have been some major legislative changes when it comes to academic eligibility for Division I. The D1 minimum core course GPA has increased from 2.0 to 2.3. That's a pretty significant jump. When you keep in mind as well that for some athletes who sometimes are not the best of students and they're a C average kid, that means for their 16 core classes, if they're class of 2016 and beyond, in order to be eligible, they've got to grade up in 5 of their 16 core classes to raise that 2.0 to a 2.3. That is a pretty significant jump. The other caveat is 10 of their 16 core requirements must be completed by the end of the student's junior year. They could have a 4.0. If they haven't satisfied 10 core yet, they will not be eligible to participate in games as a freshman. But a loophole here to maybe help save some of your kids' financial aid money, students may still receive a scholarship with the core course GPA between 2.0 and 2.29, but they cannot participate in games as a freshman when they get to college. This is a pretty big rule change, so that much more reason to be proactive with your kids and get them on track with their core classes starting as soon as they walk on your campus. But wait, there's more. Those 10 core classes are then locked in for the purposes of calculating the core GPA. So if a student wants to retake a class to try to improve on their grade, which they may have had in their freshman, sophomore, or even junior year, that repeat of that class must be completed by the first day, the day classes started their senior year. So again, once those 10 classes are taken and the senior year begins, those 10 classes are locked in for the purposes of calculating the final core course GPA. And the other caveat is, of those 10 core classes, 7 must come from the area of English, math, or science. So that much more reason to get this process started with the freshmen as soon as they walk on your campus.
And as if that isn't enough, how about this? Division II now has new standards which will impact the class of 2018 and beyond. The approved changes increase the core minimum GPA from 2.0 to 2.2 and introduce 2 new SAT-ACT sliding scales linked to your core course GPA.
The NCAA solution to assist you with this subject matter is their worksheet. Maybe some of you have seen it before. This is what it looks like. And to break it down, here's how it works. You take your core course credit and you multiply it by a grade and you get what's called a quality point or quality points. So let's break that down a step further. A core course credit is either a full 1, a 0.5, or a 0.33. And obviously this is depending upon if it's a full year credit, fall, spring semester, traditional, a half credit, fall semester, and then spring semester, or if your school's on trimesters, then it'd be a 0.33. That's what your core course credit value is. So and then your numerical grade values, the NCAA works on a 4-0 scale, 1, 2, 3, 4. A would equal 4 quality points, a B would equal 3 quality points, and so on and so forth down the line. The NCAA, however, could also have an approved weighted scale for a course, an additional value between 0.01 and 1. And that would be added based on the grade earned and each high school's grading standard. So, taking it a step further, you add the quality points for each core course, 4 for an A, 2 for a C, 3.3 potentially for a B with a weighted scale. And then you divide the total number of core course credits by the number of classes, and voila, you have your NCAA core course GPA. Easy, huh? Moving on. Remember, it's very important for you to remember that the NCAA does not recognize pluses or minuses. So if a kid has an A minus, in the NCAA's eyes, it's an A. If a kid has a C plus, it's a C, and so on and so forth for the other grades. And high schools may have different numerical conversion scales for letter grades. For example, an A may be a 90 to 100, or it could be 93 to 100, and so on and so forth. So you do all this, and then you repeat for Division II requirements. So before we get wrapped up here at the end, we will also show you a solution which our board of directors has reviewed, an online version that can help even make this process what we feel to be even easier, more seamless, and can even empower your kids to take some ownership of that process. Who is responsible for tracking core? Hear about this one quite a bit. Well, the American School Counselors Association and one of our corporate partners, a program called CoreCourseGPA.com, did a survey and found nationally that 56% of the time, this responsibility falls on guidance's shoulders. 29% of the time, it falls on athletics, and 15% of the time, it falls on other. Now, keep in mind, this survey was conducted by a school counseling association. In reality, I'm not so certain that perhaps maybe these last two numbers should be reversed, where 15% of the time, this responsibility is managed by athletics, and 29% of the time, it's managed by other, which we deem to be the families or, unfortunately, nobody. And look, we understand. This subject matter, nobody really wants it on their plate. Guidance says it's the coach's responsibility. Coaches say it's guidance's responsibility. Well, ultimately, what is our responsibility? To better serve the kids. Let's bury the hatchet, let's work together, and put our kids in a better position to succeed. That being said, what are some of the best practices for tracking NCAA core? Hold a study hall. Get the kids in your computer lab, either using the NCAA worksheets, or if you want to potentially look at the Core Course GPA program, could be an easy solution to help get them on the right track. Schedule time with guidance. I understand a lot of guidance counselors, you don't have the time you like to have to meet with the kids, and particularly the athletes. And I know with some athletes, they walk in and they go, I want to go D1. And you're looking at this kid thinking, I have no clue who you are and if you're any good in athletics, because other than basketball and football, it's tough to tell a lot of times who the stud is and who just the average Joe is. So I understand that, but that's why it's important to schedule that time, and we'll give you some questions to ask here in a little bit to have a better idea on where this kid falls in the echelon of recruiting. And have guidance and your coaches watch this webinar. I'd like to think by now you've learned quite a bit, and if you could help spread the word for other coaches and other counselors and even athletic directors, everybody will be better informed on this subject matter, thus in tune, be in position to better serve your kids. So there you go. There are some best practices in helping you track NCAA core. Let's dive into eligibility here. Headstrong. Ready? The NCAA clearinghouse, right? Everybody still calls it the clearinghouse. Stop it. The clearinghouse in name does not exist anymore. It has been rebranded as the Eligibility Center. So get down with the lingo, okay? Stop calling it the clearinghouse. Refer to it as the NCAA Eligibility Center. Their website, here it is, www.eligibilitycenter.org. www.eligibilitycenter.org. This entails a registration fee of $75. If the student athlete is on free or reduced lunch, that fee will be waived. Second thing to know, transcripts will not be reviewed until the end of the student's junior year. So while the NCAA will encourage your kids to start to register at the beginning of their junior year, their transcript will not be reviewed until the end of their junior year. And here's a big one that hardly anybody knows. Transcripts will not be reviewed unless an NCAA college has the student athlete on their institutional request list, the IRL. What's the IRL? Well, it does not stand for Indy Racing League. It stands for Institutional Request List. What that is, every Division I and Division II college in the nation is now required to submit a list of kids for every one of their sports in whom they are interested in recruiting. If a kid's name is not on a college's IRL, they have just as much chance of getting a scholarship as you and I do right now. Ain't gonna happen. So a great question for you to keep in your hip pocket to ask your parents when they come in and say, yeah, my kid wants to go D1. You ask them, well, is your kid on a school's IRL? They're not gonna have a clue because they don't know what an IRL is unless they've watched our webinar, more than likely. This puts you in a position of authority and a position of knowledge. And within authority and knowledge sometimes comes respect. And maybe a parent will say thank you. Wouldn't that be nice? But the bottom line is you ask the parent to make sure their son or daughter is on an IRL. You tell them, they ask you, how does that happen? They got to contact the college. They got to ask the coach, am I on your IRL? And they find out no, Conversation over. That's one less transcript that needs to be processed. That's $70 we just saved the family. So this IRL is a great way to find out and exactly how interested a college truly is in recruiting the student athlete. And student athletes cannot take an official recruiting visit unless they have registered with the NCAA Eligibility Center. So if an athlete comes in and says, hey, I got an official recruiting visit this weekend, you tell them, so you've registered with the NCAA Eligibility Center? If they say no, there's no official visit. It ain't going to happen because they cannot take an official visit until they've taken that step. And all this obviously involves specific core course credits, GPA, and SAT, ACT requirements. All right, so that's the Eligibility Center for the NCAA. Now let's talk about the NAIA's Eligibility Center. Some confusion with this. One has nothing to do with the other. The NCAA and the NAIA are two separate organizations, separate set of rules, two separate eligibility centers, and yes, two separate registration fees. Their website is playnaia.org. This entails a registration fee of $70. Same deal, free or reduced lunch, that fee will be waived. Now, their academic requirements for eligibility, not nearly as stringent and confusing as the NCAA's, so here they are, we'll break it down for you. They need to meet two of the following three entry-level requirements. Need to have a minimum ACT score of 18 or SAT score of 860. But before your parents get all jazzed, that does not count the written part of the exam. That goes out the window. Number two, minimum overall high school GPA of a 2.0 on a 4.0 scale. And number three, graduate in the top half of your class. So they hit two of these three markers. They will be eligible to participate as a freshman and potentially receive a scholarship at an NAIA school. So how can you be a knight in shining armor for some of your kids? How can you help some of your kids that you know are being recruited, but academically, they may not have what it takes to be eligible for an NCAA school? You ask the kid, hey, have you thought about an NAIA school? Maybe their grades are good enough to be eligible to participate at an NAIA school, and maybe they can still get a scholarship and live the dream. Our nonprofit is working with the NAIA. They've been very proactive in trying to communicate what their eligibility center and their opportunities are all about. Here's their contact information: ecinfo@naia.org, ecinfo@naia.org, or you can give them a call, 816-595-8300, 816-595-8300. Keeping our promise here, right? You're learning a lot, right? We're not done. More to come. Here are some great facts to keep in your hip pocket to help manage parents' expectations. 3% of high school student athletes receive a scholarship. That's it. 3%. And we tell your parents and your kids in our family webinar for the kids and parents, look, just because you're playing in high school and even maybe playing well in high school, it doesn't mean you have what it takes to play in college, let alone receive an athletic scholarship. Only 3% of high school student athletes nationwide receive some type of a scholarship. And here's an eye-opener. Less than 1% receive a 4-year D1 scholarship. And what we'll tell your parents for you, if someone were to tell you there is a 99.2% chance something isn't going to happen, what do you think your odds are? They're not very good, are they? Again, let us be the bad cop for you. And while National Signing Day is a wonderful day for high schools and for the kids and the families and everybody involved, what we don't hear is what happens a year later. 26%, 1 out of 4 kids who enter college on an athletic scholarship as freshmen are no longer on scholarship, entering what would be their sophomore year. Isn't that an amazing stat? You think any of your families know that? Take advantage of it. Use these numbers to your strengths and abilities and make your life easier in properly educating these kids, or better yet, send them to our webinar. We'll do it for you. 80% of scholarship financial aid opportunities are not on the D1 level. And we have a lot of information, again, for the kids to try to make them understand your best opportunity to get an education and maybe even play ball in college is probably at a college right now you've never heard of. D2, D3, NAIA, junior college. Focus where the opportunities are. They're not on the Division I level for the most part. Scholarship myth. Here we go. Let's debunk this right now. Rubber stamp it, get it done. Let's not use this term anymore. There is no such thing as a 4-year full ride. Now with an asterisk. Talk about that shortly. All athletic scholarships are 1-year renewable deals for Division II and D1 schools. While they now have the option to guarantee more than 1 year, they don't have to. It's just an option, and it's a mixed bag. Some schools are offering all the way 5-year guarantees. Some are going still year by year. But the bottom line is there is no such thing as a full ride. All athletic scholarships for Division II are 1-year renewable deals, and chances are that's still the case for Division I, even if that opportunity is still there to get multi-year deals. Cooperative education. Again, this is something we talk about for your families. Some of you are probably very familiar with co-op, as it's called. This is a great opportunity on the college level where we try to encourage our families and kids to find colleges that offer co-op. What's co-op? Work-study. Real job in college, paying a real fee and a real wage and with real experience. So when they graduate college, they've got something on their resume to separate themselves from the pack and potentially get a job. So try to share this opportunity with your kids when you counsel and talk to them. We try to teach them to negotiate. Bottom line, you talk to college recruiters, you don't ask, you don't get. Don't ask, don't get. And families don't always like talking about money. Nobody really likes talking about money. It's a sensitive topic. But when it comes to recruiting and getting a financial aid package, you need to. And if you don't ask, you're not going to get. We try to also encourage the families to save for college. 529 plans. There's a great website, if you're not familiar with it already, to find college saving plans in every state in the country. collegesavings.org. 529 plan now exists in every state, and we tell the families, look, let's take a look at the kind of money that families spend on athletics. And in some cases, with travel teams and going to showcases and events, it adds up. It's not unusual to spend $10,000 per year as an athletic investment. And that starts now sometimes as early as 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds. So you take 10 years at $10K a year, that's $100,000 worth of potential tuition savings plus interest that they could have to help pay for college. So for your seniors, maybe it's getting a little late, but maybe some of those families still have kids that are in middle school. Maybe an opportunity is still there to get them to look for a surefire full ride, a 529 plan. All right, social networking. Man, it's changed people's lives, haven't it? Here's the golden rule of social networking sites, Facebook, Twitter, whatever you're into, and this is not only for the kids, this is for you adults there also, because I hear stories of adults shooting themselves in the foot also. Ready? Here it is. Commit it to memory. Live by it. Never Facebook or Twitter when you are bitter. All right? Laugh all you want, but it's true. Working in the media as long as I did, there is always something called a cool down period after a game, usually about 10 minutes before the media can talk to the players and athletes. There's a reason for that. Players are emotional. And when you're emotional, you say and do things very frequently you later regret. And with social networking, there is no cool down period. You are live 24 hours a day. You can tweet something, you can post something, and in a second, you have shot yourself in the foot without even realizing it. Not only the kids, but some of you parents. I'll quickly share a story of a mom in Kentucky who put on her Facebook page how she misses her kids because they're leaving such a mess when they come visit her at the house. That kind of got somebody interested. Where are your kids? Why aren't they living with you? They were living somewhere else, but they were going to the wrong school, and the district didn't know about it. And that team had to forfeit 6 wins because of one mom's Facebook post. So be very, very careful. Show you some examples. Here's a student athlete from New Jersey who was being highly recruited, and he got expelled from his high school a week before signing day because of graphic tweets. Other examples. Tyler Hansbrough from North Carolina. We share the story of cell phone cameras. Everybody has them nowadays. Here he is in midair. Cell phone camera, cell phone camera, cell phone camera. Cell phone cameras everywhere to be found. Not Tyler's finest moment. Don't become a cell phone victim. How can we forget the story of Brett Favre, right? And what he allegedly did with his cell phone camera. Again, examples that we share, not only of the people that we know, but what really affects our audience, the kids, the anonymous athlete, the one like Jennifer Mueller, okay? She was a star track runner in college. And I don't know, I'm kind of going on a limb here. I don't think that's Gatorade in that funnel, all right? But here she is somewhere, frat party, off-campus apartment, and someone clicked this picture, maybe with a cell phone camera, and now it's online for the world to see. And when we tell your kids, you got to be careful. As an athlete, you're a target. And as being a target, people are looking for you to slip up. And Jennifer, like many athletes, one day is going to go and get a job. And that prospective employer is going to research them online. And you don't want pictures like this showing up online. That could prevent you from getting a job. So these are, again, just some of the stories we share for your kids and why we encourage you to get them to watch this service. We share the story of Matt James. Man, this kid, he had it going on. All-American, offered a scholarship to go play at Notre Dame, projected to potentially start as a freshman at the money position, left tackle. Went on spring break, go blow off some steam like so many kids feel the need to do. Chaperone trip, mind you. Reportedly, had a little too much to drink. Yeah, newsflash, underage kids drink sometimes. And Matt reportedly started jawing it up on people on a balcony in his hotel room. And he lost his balance and he fell. And Matt didn't blow out his knee or tear his rotator cuff. Matt, with so much promise and so much ahead of him, fell to his death right there because of one bad decision. I hate telling this story, but a lesson is there from it. Let us tell it to your kids so they don't make those same kind of mistakes and make them understand that life is fragile and every decision has consequences. Moving on, scholarships, do they differ? You better believe it. Let's run through this. NCAA Division I. For men, football, FBS, and basketball, those sports on Division I only, those scholarships may not be divided, but it does not guarantee 100% funding. These are called head count sports. And for women, here are the same requirements for basketball, or I should say same opportunities for basketball, volleyball, gymnastics, and tennis. Those scholarships may not be divided, but it does not guarantee 100% funding. Some of these non-revenue sports, they could be funded at 80%, could be 50%, could be 60%. Your big-time programs, your big-time sports, yeah, you get about banking it being guaranteed at 100%, but it's not a general rule of thumb. There's no guarantee it is funded 100%. Those are called head count sports for these sports on Division I and these sports only. Every other Division I and all Division II sports are called equivalency scholarships, meaning those scholarships are very commonly divided over a multitude of student athletes. If you get 30, 40, 50% funding, you're doing pretty well. But that's how those scholarships differ from D1 to D2. NCAA Division III, non-scholarship, but man, there's a ton of financial aid. And the story we share, which I did not share with you yet, is my own story. Okay, I pursued an NFL career for 5 years, and most of you are probably thinking, must have been a blue chip recruit. Well, guess what? I wasn't. I got some sniffs from D1 and D2, but for me, Division III was the best opportunity. And while it was non-scholarship, man, I got a lot of financial aid. And nowadays, there are a lot of Division III schools that provide better financial aid packages than their D2 or D3 counterparts. And you can walk in very commonly as a freshman and start playing immediately. NAIA scholarships may also be divided as they can for junior colleges for their D1 and D2 schools. And look at junior college opportunities. We talk about this also. The price of education now is astronomical. It's not getting any cheaper. So why not go to a JUCO for a couple years, bang out your electives, which go towards a 4-year major, and then maybe pursue that dream of playing a big-time sport at a big-time school. And Division III, as mentioned, no scholarship. So there you go. Those are your scholarships, and that is how they do indeed differ. National Letter of Intent. What's all this about? If a student athlete tells you they've been offered a National Letter of Intent, you got a live one on the hook. Okay? You've got a kid that a college has made a commitment to financially. Their website is national-letter.org, and this is a voluntary program of which just over 600 D1 and D2 schools are members of. Basically what it is, it provides a 1-year guarantee, now with an asterisk, but it stops the recruiting process. The kid is committed to the school is committed to the kid. No more dating, no more flirting, game over. They're committed for 1 year. The asterisks, they must meet academic eligibility requirements. And unfortunately, every year there are kids we see on TV on National Signing Day who can't fulfill that scholarship because they're academically ineligible. And the other part of this now is D1 schools, as we've mentioned earlier, now have the ability, don't have to, but they have the ability to guarantee more than 1 year on a scholarship. Moving along. How do I get out of a national letter of intent? Well, it ain't easy. You will more than likely lose 1 year of eligibility. That's a basic penalty. I say more than likely because the basic penalty can be waived or reduced by asking for a complete release from the institution, which the institution has the right to deny. And very frequently they do. So we tell your kids, before you sign a national letter of intent, you make 150% sure that's the college where you're going to. Just because the first Wednesday in February is National Signing Day doesn't mean it has to be your National Signing Day. You sign when you're ready. And remember, you sign a national letter of intent with the institution, not the coach. Coach bolts, kid is still committed to the school. Coach resigns, takes another job, gets fired, whatever. The kid is committed to the institution, not the coach. And here's a great question to keep also in your hip pocket to remind the kids. It's a simple one. But as you've probably seen already, sometimes simple questions reveal tremendous answers. Have your kids ask this question. If the college you are researching did not offer your sport, would you still consider attending that school? Isn't that so obvious and basic? But so few kids and families ask themselves that question. If you ask that self your question, the picture very frequently clears up. So if the college you're researching did not offer your sport, would you still consider attending that school? Feeling overwhelmed? Maybe some of you are. I know the families very frequently are when they watch our service. I say, don't panic. It's quite normal. At which point, a lot of families say, well, no problem. My guidance counselor does this stuff, right? Well, I think we all know guidance counselors and coaches are stretched pretty thin. Let's take a look at your typical counselor. The American School Counselors Association recommended student-to-counselor ratio is 250 to 1. I know, a lot of you are chuckling right now. I can hear it. National average right now is 500 to 1. Let's put that number in perspective, shall we? Approximately 33% of a student body plays sports. So, typical counselor working with 500 kids, that translates into about 165 athletes. We now know 3% of those athletes will receive a scholarship on average. That's about 5 kids. Those 5 kids, well, that now represents 1% of the students an average counselor works with. To which we pose the question to your families to have your back. How much time and attention do you dedicate to 1% of your daily responsibilities? I know how much I do. Not a whole lot. So we try to encourage them to get involved because they must understand that their guidance counselor is stretched thin and they need to take control. And an easy first step for them to take control is to watch the student parent webinar, which is available on our website or through your state association. And we also encourage you to potentially consider our corporate partner, which I talked about a little bit earlier, to help track core classes. That is a program called corecoursegpa.com. If you search it online, it may come back as formerly Clearinghouse Calculator. The program is also endorsed by the NIAAA. And what really caught our board's attention, other than an unpaid endorsement by Coach John Gruden, is the academic success this program has. 65% of kids say the program has helped them focus more on their grades, while 49% say they have gotten better grades. Here's the contact information and their phone number. We do encourage you, if you're looking for an easy solution to track the single most important part of the recruiting process, the academic side, we encourage you to check out our corporate partner. We feel they will provide you a great service. There are also some additional resources on freerecruitingwebinar.org. You've taken the webinar, which is obviously cost-free. Perhaps you're looking to get certified on this knowledge, we now have a certification program. The proceeds support our foundation as well as our partnered association in your state.
This does conclude this in-service webinar, which is endorsed, supported, or working with the following coaching, athletic administrative, and scholastic organizations.
Well, that wraps up the webinar, and about an hour ago, we made a promise to you that if you stuck through it in 60 minutes, you would be better educated and better informed, allowing you to make better decisions about the recruiting process. We certainly hope you're in that position. We encourage you, share this resource, help us, help others, and if you have to, watch it again yourself. And if we really helped you out, remember, we're a nonprofit. We can use some assistance. Please feel free to make a tax-deductible donation through the website. And if you're on Facebook or Twitter, like us and follow us. So on behalf of everybody at freerecruitingwebinar.org, my name is Dan Issa. We thank you for your time and wish you the best of luck.